of this screen, where I've got my paid AdWords, my pay-per-click, my organic. We see up here on the top of the screen, and how, especially as independent hotels, that's getting more and more expensive. The money that you have to invest in that. You're probably investing money in reputation management. You may have one of the platforms out there that helps you monitor your reviews and do all of that work. You're responding to reviews. You're doing all that work, and yet you're missing out on the key point of sale right there at the bottom of the screen. This particular hotel does very well. They're in that spot. So again, there's a very good synergy between reputation management and MetaSearch, because why would you do one without the other? And it goes the other way too, actually. If you're doing MetaSearch, you better know what your reputation is. Because I've interviewed many groups of independent hotels, and they've all told me the same thing. And guess what? If your reputation is less than about a 2.5, MetaSearch doesn't work very well for you. In fact, here's the irony of that. You would think that you just wouldn't get any clicks, right? No. In fact, they do get the clicks, but their conversions are very, very low off of it. So reputation management is an important complement to what you're doing on MetaSearch. All right, and of course there's many, many other sites out there. Too many for us to go through them one by one today, but there's a large selection of different channels that you can be in, and again, some pros and cons to each one of them, which we'll talk about some hints about that here in just a little bit when we talk about some of the priorities. So, in order to be in MetaSearch, there are three fundamental things that your bidding mechanisms that go along with them, and you want to make sure that you're optimizing that correctly. But it's more than just bookings. You know, when we think about what's our motivation, the number one thing is, well, I want revenue, I want bookings. That's the number one thing, right? Yeah, that's important. There are also a lot of other reasons, and one of those being the branding. Let's say we're Hilton, for example, and Hilton has actually made a concerted effort to say, in a major market like Washington, D.C., New York City, Dallas, Los Angeles, whatever the case may be, if somebody is searching for my branded search terms like we showed earlier, I want to make sure I'm coming up at the top of that. I want my brand to be represented, to be coming up on that list. Maybe I want to have the volume of traffic that comes from that. Just having that link traffic coming in, SEO perspective, that's a good thing, right? Maybe I want to own the guest. And when we talk about owning the guest, I don't mean just a matter of having the guest data, which, by the way, you don't get from an Expedia or a Booking.com, but having a plan on what you're going to do with that data. We heard some people talk about that from the CRM perspective yesterday, about using that data in a wise format. And that is so very important. Having it is meaningless unless you do something with it. The cost of sale. Now, this is an important positioning. It can actually get you a better position and do it at a lower cost per click. And that tends to drive better conversion rates. So let's show some examples of what I mean by that. Take, for example, this hotel. Look at the rates on the screen, if you can see them from the back of the room. And they're kind of all over the place. I've got $100, I've got $91, I've got $111. They're up, they're down, they're so on. So even if I take the one that has the lowest price, which I might be inclined to do, as a consumer, I'm still looking at this going, you know, I wonder if there's another lower price elsewhere. I'm still not sure I'm getting the best rate because they are all over the place. It's like going to a flea market and you're shopping around the flea market and you got one vendor over here that's going to sell you 5 t-shirts for $10, but you got another guy over here that's going to sell you 6 t-shirts for $10. And I'm thinking maybe there's a guy over here in the back that's going to give me 8 t-shirts for $10, whatever the case may be. By the hotel that has the lowest rate, again and again. That helps you get to the top spot and helps you get to that top spot at a lower cost per click. So we've talked about this from the perception perspective. Let's check that off. We've talked about it from the lower cost per click, so let's check that off. I want to go back to that conversion part of it because if we do some language math, if you will, better positioning equals more visibility, equals more traffic, consumer confidence equals higher conversion rates. So what I've done now, just by having proper rate parity, is I've gotten better position, I've gotten more visibility, I've gotten more
better advantage by having everything the same across the board.
I can't go backwards on here, but no, you want to be able to have, at a minimum, you need to be equal to the lowest rate. That's the minimum requirement. But you could be one better than that by having the lowest rate on your direct website, because that can get you better positioning at a lower CPC on many of the different sites out there. TripAdvisor is a good example. TripAdvisor, in fact, just recently changed their methodology a little bit in that they said, hey, in fact, let's go back a year ago this time. TripAdvisor, you can literally buy your way to the top. So that if I was a consumer and I went directly to your website through the brand.com front door, I wouldn't see this rate. I would see, they've been doing this for a long time. Why can't we as hotels do the same thing? Aside from fighting about the rate parity, that's another issue. Great questions. All right. Oh, one more?
Assuming that all the channels have the same rate, including the direct channel, do consumers tend to trust the OTAs more because they've heard the name Expedia like a million times a day?
That's a great question. I'm going to show a slide here in just a little bit from Trivago in particular, because Trivago is one of the MetaSearch channels that, to me, really gets this point. Trivago has made a choice to feature the hotel website as a booking option prominently, even if it does not always have the lowest rate. Now, it has to be within reason, not to misunderstand. If you're $50 off, then yeah, no. As long as you're within reason, Hotel Direct website will get a prime position. Why? Because Trivago figured out that, you know what, the average consumer is more likely to click on that Hotel Direct website than something like easy-to-click-travel.com that they've never heard of. There's that confidence, a consumer confidence factor in there. And if I'm Trivago, how do I get paid? I get paid off the click, right? I want the consumer to click, and that's how I get them to do it. All right, so that's important. And let's look at another example, an extended stay hotel. So I'm $50 per night, but you're staying for 10 nights. Again, that can add up. So it's important to be aware is that that's going to be proportionate. Think about how that affects your changes between, say, a low season and a high season. I had one particular hotel about a year ago that coming up into December, they had a crossover from low season to high season. Their rates went from $600 per night to $1,800 per night. $1,800 per night times a 5-night stay at 1% gets to be a really expensive cost per click. So things like that can happen on Google, and you definitely want to be aware of them. Now, each of these examples are going to have other nuances that apply to them. You'll see that disclaimer on every one of the slides I'm going to show here, but that's important because, to be fair, that $30 per night probably has a higher conversion rate than a $1,000 per night hotel, right? MetaSearch is a very spontaneous booking process. It is a very mobile mentality. I will tell you the majority of your volume is coming off of desktop. But even though the volume is coming off of desktop, it's still a very mobile mentality. So that's important to make sure we understand. All right, so let's move along. Local universal on Google. Again, we talked about this as being your branded search terms, so owning those terms. People are already looking for you, and that's more about market shift. Whereas your maps page are very generalized search terms. These are people looking for hotels in a space, and that, to some degree, is going to be a newer audience. Go ahead, back then.
On the branded search term, on the branded search terms, it is my understanding that you can prevent and limit OTAs from bidding on your branded terms. Is that correct?
On Google AdWords, that is correct. On MetaSearch, that is not correct. There are no specific search terms tied to the MetaSearch point of sale because you're already at the hotel. You've already selected a hotel, and now you're looking at purchase options for that hotel. So that's a point of sale now that is beyond the AdWords component. So you're already within the hotel. Now it's a question of within that hotel who gets the link. And so that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the presentation, actually, when I showed that Google screen, that there's a loophole there.
Right.
They can bid on your branded terms. Another question over here. By the way, I know we've got about 15 minutes left here, so yeah.
That OTAs from bidding on your Google AdWords.
On your Google AdWords or your Google Hotel ads?
Google, the AdWords.
Okay, so AdWords, that's a pay-per-click. So that gets into your pay-per-click. That's outside of Meta. But there are things that you can do, and we heard one gentleman talk about this yesterday. If they're bidding on your Google AdWords, your proprietary and branded search terms, you have squatters' rights, basically. And you can go to Google and say, hey, nope, these guys are bidding on our AdWords. Yes. Okay, I'm going to pick up the speed here just a little bit. If I'm moving too fast, anybody, just slow me down. But I know I've got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to move it here. So anyway, maps, not predisposed to a particular hotel. All right, so this can be your new business. New business is a little more expensive than what your people that are looking directly at you. So more new business, it does have higher cost per clicks. All right, let's talk now about TripAdvisor. By way of comparison, it is a fixed cost per click as opposed to a percentage. That can be good and bad depending upon who you are. So $2.25 per click times 10 clicks, $22.50, right? At $1,000 revenue, that's 2.2%. At $100 revenue, that's 22%. Makes a big difference. Of course, at that $100 revenue, your cost per click might be lower. We found that our average CPC for our entire portfolio of hotels in the United States, year to date through July, was $2.25. That's why I used that number in there. Real quickly, going through the different options here on TripAdvisor, there are different ways you can bid on TripAdvisor. They go anywhere from your managed CPC, where you've got multiple listings, to your bid to only, single chevron as they call it, and also, of course, your TripAdvisor Instant Book. I can tell you more about each one of those, but probably an offline conversation. Yep.
Yeah, just real quickly, just because we were talking about rate parity issues before, what happens for Instant Book if you don't have rate parity?
That's a very good question. So if you're doing Instant Book, you've signed a contract with TripAdvisor that says, I'm going to pay you 12%, 15%, whatever the case may be, and I expect to have 50% rotation as a result of that, right? But guess what? If you don't have rate parity, you're out. There's a clause in there that says your rates must be equal to or lower than the lowest rate, or you're not going to get that visibility. So it automatically negates that whole contract that says you're going to have that 50% visibility. So now the important thing with that. All right, hybrid channels. Kayak also has a lower CPC. I'm not going to get into a lot of details for time. Again, view our extended version with the deleted scenes for more details. But what I do want to go to is, oh, by the way, there's that hotel website. This comparison. So we get on here and you see this is based upon our numbers, our big data, using year-to-date numbers in comparison of CPCs. Google, $4.16, down to Trivago down here at 93 cents. Now, to be fair, is Trivago going to command as much traffic as Google? No, it's not. But you can get it 93 cents a click. Why wouldn't you, right? Now, to be fair, there's a lot of other different sites that we talked about, the Hitmonks, the Skyscanners, and different things like that. And you know what? They come in here even at cheaper cost per click in many cases. And that's why when we talk about wholesalers, they came up yesterday and be able to keep track of your distribution channels and where your supply chain is going to, and you get some wholesaler coming in at half the cost. That's why you'll see them coming up on a Hitmonk, which, by the way, got bought yesterday.
I was just going to ask you if you want to remember that. It came up in the news while they were doing the presentation yesterday.
You'll see them popping up on Hitmonk because they can pay 50 cents a click. So it's a very easy marketing campaign for them to get in there, connect, throw in them at a very low CPC, and it's very easy for them to get some exposure by doing that. All right, so rate parity, low cost per click, conversion rate. There's a number of companies here today, including our host TripTease, Travel Tripper, and others that do a very good job with their booking engines, and that's so important because at some point in time, somebody's got to book a reservation. No matter how we do this math, eventually there's got to be a booking. And so you see versions that are optimized for Meta. Hilton did a really good job of this. I clicked once, clicked twice, and boom, I'm giving you my information. Let's look at another example over here where not quite as optimized. Names have been deleted to protect the innocent. And we click through here. Okay, where do I go next? We go down there. Okay, let's add on this and all these different steps to get to that place where I'm giving you my name. Now, everybody right now is going, hey, this guy Dean said we shouldn't do any upgrades or sell ancillary revenues. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is back to that statement earlier, MetaSearch is a very mobile mentality. Don't get in the way. Get this done as quickly as possible. In fact, look at the assisted booking models. TripAdvisor Instant Booking. If I do that, click, book. Giving you my name. Google's Book on Google. Click, book. Sell your upgrades afterwards. Get the booking. That's your first priority with MetaSearch. It's a mobile mentality. I'm not messing around. I already know the rates and availability. That's normally my number one drop-off point in the sales cycle coming up on websites, the rates and availability screen, right? I already know the rates and availability. And I said that I want to book a reservation. Yeah.
Real quick, you talk about the other smaller channels, talk about the Hitmonk being sold and so forth. Skyscanner, for those who don't know, really entered into the MetaSearch space because they now have, in addition to hotels, they also have flights and rented cars, so they've incorporated all three. So they're actually a MetaSearch engine to this. And going to your point with this, for budgeting 2017, how much consideration should be given to those other channels? I mean, I know it's a country source kind of thing. We even have a link for them to see what the meta searches are according to the country region that they can look at for budgeting. But how much above their budget should they consider for some of those ancillary or secondary kind of meta search platforms like Skyscanner, like Hitmonk, those kind of guys?
Well, that's a great question. That's going to depend largely upon this next part here, actually, which is the goals. What are you trying to accomplish? So we talked about some of those examples earlier from this screen here, the branding, the volume, the owning, the guest, the cost of sale. If your primary goal is branding, you want to be all over Google, right? That's where you want to be seen and be seen and so on. But you also want to have that exposure everywhere. You want to have it in all channels. So that's also where we encourage having a diversified portfolio, but also being able to do a cross-channel optimization of all of that. It doesn't do you any good to work with 10 different channels individually. That's going back to the days where we had extraness to manage our merchant model rates. And so now you're trying to do all those individually. You're trying to optimize one against the other. No, you've got to have that all together in one platform. Make sure that you're doing that. But be aware of what you're trying to accomplish. What is your goal? If your goal is return on ad spend and your conversion rate is low and your cost per click is high, the math probably isn't going to work on something like Google. But if I could do that same thing at those same numbers and go over here to Trivago or Skyscanner at a lower CPC, that could be very beneficial for me. All right, so to your question, what should I budget for MetaSearch? And my answer to that is stop. You shouldn't. Why do I say that? Well, let's say that you're going to put a cap on your budget for MetaSearch for a moment, and you shut off your program. That doesn't stop MetaSearch. It stops MetaSearch for you. There's a long list of other people that are lining up, ready to get in that same space and take that booking for you. So let's farm out that booking to Hotwire. Sure, why not? Now, part of that question then is, what is my cost per sale? If my cost per sale, or cost of sale, coming from MetaSearch is 10%, and I'm paying Expedia 15%, why would I cap that? That doesn't make sense. That's saying that, nope, I don't want to take this at 10% cost of sale anymore. I want to pay 5% more and let somebody else do it for me. Why would I do that? Well, part of the reason is because you have to decide, where is this budget coming from? And who's in charge of it? Is it the marketing department? Is it the reservations department? And there's always a lot of back and forth. It's what we call the budget volleyball game. And within a marketing department's perspective, there has to be that line item budget, right? Within the reservations department perspective, they say, well, hey, I've got this commission I'm paying Expedia 15, 20%. I've got this over here, 10. So there's different viewpoints depending upon who's doing it, and usually at the end of the day, it looks something like this. So how do you deal with that? Well, there's a couple of ways to resolve it. One is you can work with what they call a CPA model, or also known as a commission model. So cost per acquisition, pros and cons. Google and TripAdvisor both do a very good job of this. I have a specific webinar dedicated to this very topic. You see the Billy there. By the way, we'll share all of these links and everything on a special page for you that you're welcome to view after the presentation. That's a 20-minute webinar that talks about that exact topic. But to sum it up, advantage, safe. You're paying a flat commission. You know exactly what you're going to pay. No budget required, no line item budget. Disadvantage, you've got to have pixels installed on it from each of those channels, and you have no control. So they're going to reverse engineer that cost per click, right? If they're getting a commission, they're going to reverse engineer that back through. Here's a commission, here's the revenue, here's my conversion, here's my click-through, here's my impressions, here's what your effective cost per click was, and based on that, here's your positioning. So if your goal is to be in that number one position all the time, guess what? This probably isn't going to do it. But it is much safer. It is easier from that perspective. CPC models, by way of comparison, have the advantage of that you can control your own objective, fewer pixels required, because you can generally go through one MetaSearch manager and do that. Disadvantage, they do require funding, and that funding is going to vary depending upon where you're going. All right, so I get it, but I still need a budget. So things to identify. Number one, what are my goals? We talked about that earlier. How does this compare with my other campaigns, your SEO campaigns? For example, it shouldn't have the equal numbers as your pay-per-click, but you should see those numbers parallel each other. The ups and downs should be very similar. What is my cost of sale? That's going to be a key qualifier in determining what I'm going to have to budget for this. Which was my rate parity, those other items, but what if I don't have any of this data? I don't know what my cost of sale is. Okay, that comes back to that CPA model we talked about. It helps you gather some data with minimal risk. Seek out comparisons with similar hotels in similar markets. Reach out to your digital marketing provider and ask them, hey, what are you seeing for a Marriott Marquis style hotel in Washington, D.C., comparing that with a similar type of property in New York City? What do you see happening with them? What are their numbers looking like? And look at comparisons. And then test the waters. Dip your toe in the water a little bit. See what happens. You have to get some historical data. If you're trying to create your budget and you're blind, it's a shot in the dark. You've got to start getting some information together. Okay, so with that, I know, give me a number. How many marketing people do we have in the room here? Okay, marketing people, give me a number, right? I've got a number for you. The ultimate answer in life and everything in the universe is 42. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? Okay, this is great. All right, so I'm going to have Chris in the back of the room help me out with something. Actually, we'll give you a number. In fact, let's bleep the you know what out there. Science the bleep out of this. Chris, if you could switch to that internet browser screen. We've developed, with the cooperation of Lauren from Hospitality Digital Marketing, a revenue calculator. And with this revenue calculator, that allows you to do, and by the way, we'll include the link to this in that after page, the after party ceremony, if you will, and you can go in there and play around with it. But what it allows you to do is go in and put in a couple of different variables. If you scroll down just a little bit on here, a number of rooms, for example. Let's put in 225 rooms. Average length of stay is 2.5. Let's leave that as it is, actually. Scroll down a little further. Let's see, our average daily rate is $300. And guess what I'm paying over here at the Marriott, give or take. Anyway. And let's say that our occupancy rate is 85%, 85. And then we can come down here and we can choose our type of property, because not every property is going to be the same. Anything from a destination resort down to an independent non-urban. Let's choose the branded urban limited service, the third one down right there. Okay, and then scroll down a little bit further, and so we see this is the general amount of revenue with a decimal point going all the way out. That's like the value of pi. And so this is the type of revenue that we would see coming from your MetaSearch campaign. Now, if you know that your cost of sale is 10%, you can backwards and reverse engineer this. So at a 10% cost of sale, $502,000 worth of revenue, $50,000. That's my budget. You can reverse it. Now, if you don't know your cost of sale, that's another thing that we need to figure out, right? Come talk to me afterwards and we'll help you with that. So that's where you can come in, play around with this, and get some ideas to what you should budget for your MetaSearch in the coming year. Let's go ahead and go back to the presentation. I'm hearing that we're getting really close on time yet. Well, it's only about 3 minutes. Okay. All right, so what happens next? There's a lot of things going on out there in the world of MetaSearch. There's a lot of things going on out there in the world of direct bookings. And as in with this picture here, there's the big orca killer whale right outside your canoe. What happens next? Well, a couple of things that you need to know about. Retargeting and programmatic advertising. I know there were some people from Sojourn here yesterday. Are they still here today? No? Okay, so Sojourn is a company that's doing very well in this space, but these are some terms that you need to start being aware of, because they're going to become very relevant. I'll tie them back to MetaSearch here in a moment. Retargeting, first of all, basically means that I know where you went, you've gone through this cycle, and seriously, we know you're curious. They know it's a little stalkerish, actually. So they know that you've been there, and they're coming back to tell you, hey, come in. See, that's why you see those pop-up ads that are coming up on Facebook all the time, because you search for a Dyson vacuum cleaner, and so it keeps on coming up with pictures of the Dyson vacuum cleaner and gets annoying after a while. And by way of comparison, so that retargeting is reactive. Programmatic is proactive. Remember those terms. But proactive, this programmatic is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Some of these graphs, which I won't go over, talk about how it's escalating in the impact. But here's an inherent flaw to all of these. So here's an ad from earlier this year where they were doing the political, well, still are, but we're in D.C., so apologize. But look over here in the top right-hand corner. Trivago, Hilton Garden Inn, Washington at $49. Yay! Except for I click on it. What? That's an inherent flaw to retargeting and programmatic advertising. It is static data. So it's not, and it doesn't necessarily know what dates you're looking at. Right? So it's really what it's telling you is that there are rates from $49, that's the small print, ends up being $238. So there are ways now actually that can be worked to where this, you have all the static content, but live ARI data can be fed into these to have real-time information. We see another example of that happening with Facebook. Facebook right now is getting to that space as well with travel, and very important to understand how your data plays into that, because it is no longer static. You have to have that real-time data. Where does this play into MetaSearch? This is where I'm cheating from Skift. This is my last slide, so give me about 30 more seconds. I actually copied this from Skift just last week because they had a very good article that was talking about virtual assistants. And you have the likes of your Echo, your Siri, and your Google, Google Now, and so on. What's going to happen a year from now in terms of MetaSearch? Maybe not a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, but in the not so distant future. The answer is there will no longer be clicks. Clicks will become irrelevant. Because I'm going to be going, hey Siri, show me get me some rates for the Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C. And Siri is going to go out. Siri is going to shop all of these sites for me, as is Echo and anybody else. And they are going to come back now and tell me, here's the rates. What happens if your rates are not available in those spaces? They're going to get it from somewhere, right? Are they going to get it from you? Are they going to get it from Expedia? Where are they going to get it from? MetaSearch is taking on a whole new perspective when we start getting into the world of meta bots, because that's essentially what that's going to amount to. So very important. Last but not least, as we talked about earlier, and we'll share this presentation with everybody, but the full version, the extended cut with deleted scenes, you can see the link at the bottom of the screen there, bit.ly DS Direct Meta. I welcome you to go there. There's a wealth of other information that you can certainly take advantage of. There is a full 1 hour presentation on there. And we actually have content for a number of other things. Webinars that are specific to budgeting, specific to TripAdvisor, specific to the assisted booking models, the pros and cons and different things like that. Hopefully it's educational and useful for you. Thank you for your time today. Any other questions that I can take? Or we need close up? See any? We have a question here.
I heard, you might be biased, but somebody had told me that pay-per-click is dead and Meta is going to be the way to go. Do you think that AdWords is not as important anymore and focus everything on Meta?
I won't say that it's dead. I will say that Meta has cannibalized it. So it is not dead. It'll never be dead, but organic search is dead because very little happens anymore without paying for it. That whole first page has pay-per-click on it. But definitely MetaSearch has... What's that? Well, not entirely. No, you can't do away with it by any means. You still have to have, that's the catch to it, right? You still have to have it, but your organic SEO is really going to put you on the first page.
Jennifer has decided thumbs up. We can live for another couple of minutes, so we have 2 questions.
Awesome, okay.
Hi, Dean. Jeremy from the Shawnee and an independent property. The OTAs seem to do some tricks with our rate from time to time, like over the weekends when I'm not in the office, they'll lower rate by $1 and it'll have a big impact on Meta. Are there any platforms out there that, I know that TripTease has it on our booking engine, but unfortunately the Meta crawlers don't pick up that rate match from TripTease. Is there any solution to this problem, on a small property basis?
There is actually. There's one specific one I'm thinking of. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to name names. Actually, talk with this guy right here. Patrick over here. Hey, look at you. So they have some tools actually that will allow you to actually feed that. So if they find a rate on the Expedia that's $1 lower, not only will they match it, but they can feed that back to the OTA so that now your OTA is also adjusted to be $1 lower.
Abe Salam from the William Vale Hotel in Brooklyn. Question for you, as far as Trip Connect, so I'm at parity with all my sites, but I'm finding that Trip Connect is not producing, and it's really lagging from a production standpoint. So I was wondering if you're seeing the same thing in regards to Trip Connect, or what I could do to increase bookings through Trip Connect.
To give a full answer to that, I need to look at your property in more detail and understand more about it. But on the surface, what I would tell you is that, first of all, one of the things that TripAdvisor did within the past couple of months here is they took their instant booking real estate and shoved it in there with their different their chevrons that you see on there. I think that was a huge mistake for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't think it belonged there, but from a CPC perspective, if I'm TripAdvisor, that's prime time real estate. And they just took away a 3rd position in there to put in their instant book. And now their instant book is no longer prominently positioned off to the side. So I think that was a mistake that they made, first of all. One other thing that TripAdvisor has changed this year, as I mentioned earlier, is that now rate parity becomes an important part of that. So that's going to help you there as well. So what we need to know now is, what's your ADR at your hotel?
Well, we just opened up last week, so.
Okay.
We just opened up.
That's important to know as well. Okay. But just a ballpark figure, what rates are you running at?
Low 400s.
Low 400s? Okay. And who do you see, what websites or what OTAs are typically beating you on there?
Expedia and Booking.
Expedia and Booking? Okay. So you're a new site that's just on the market, and Expedia and Booking.com are very excited about it, so they're getting in there and bidding for that spot. Keep in mind that Expedia and Booking.com and all those sites, their motivation is to get visibility. Of course, yes, they want bookings. Not saying they don't, but they want visibility. That visibility doesn't have to be necessarily from you. They're not bidding just on your hotel. They're bidding on every hotel in that market. So you're the new shiny toy in the market right now. You're exciting to them. Hold out a little bit longer. That will usually start waning and start declining because it no longer has excitement. But the other thing is you also need to start getting content on TripAdvisor. You need reviews, you need ratings, you need to have all that information on there to help your TripAdvisor popularity ranking get up to the top as well. If you're what city are you in? Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, you said that right. So if you're not in the top let's say 25% of the hotel listings in that market, your visibility off of TripAdvisor is going to be very minimal anyway. So your traffic is going to be low. So that's going to be one of the other problems that you have to deal with. Does that help? Okay.
With that, we have to probably wrap up because we do have to get moving on. A couple of things, Dean's being modest about this. There's actually a whole boatload of data on this link here. He's done a series of webinars. It's not sales pitchy webinars. It's actually helpful webinars. 4 webinars on learning MetaSearch, going through the whole scalability of it in the sense of usability and so forth, plus an additional 4 webinars, platform specific for budgeting for 2017. They're on there. The revenue calculator you saw, there will be a cost calculator on there, which will be the inversion of that revenue calculator, so you'll be able to measure your cost of relationship to it. The slide share presentation that he has, there's 56 people in the room. There was 214 people online that watched it at the same time. The live presentation link will also be there. You'll have to go to the Facebook page that it was broadcasted on to see it, but you'll be able to watch the entire presentation here as well for that process. He'll be on the live This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing show next week, Friday. He's on the podcast this week of Hospitality Digital Marketing. So if you want to catch any more conversations about MetaSearch, he'll be on both of those. You'll find the information on that link as well. We're done. Thank you.
And I'll be here today.
Thank you. I think that was a great start, really energetic morning, and thank you very much for all the questions. Let's take a 10-minute break, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll start again at 10 o'clock.